Chapter 6, Nonverbal Communication. So what do we think of first when we think of nonverbal communication? Communication without words. I bet the first thing you think of is facial expressions. True, facial expressions are one way of expressing nonverbal communication. There are other ways too, and some of these might surprise you as we talk about each of them. Facial expressions, body language, crossing your legs, standing with your legs apart, or walking fast, gesturing a certain way, touch, moving in closer to someone, moving away from someone, wearing a tattoo, even silence. Those are all types of nonverbal communication. And by looking at some of these and we might better realize when we're sending a message without even realizing it sometimes. And by realizing that, we'll have more control over the message that we send to others. One way we can use nonverbal messages, along with verbal messages, is accenting what we're saying, complimenting. In other words, we smile when we give a compliment, or by complimenting, we also might include, if I say, I don't want you to do that, I might pound the table with my fist. That's pretty extreme, I know, but that is what we mean when we mean complimenting. I'm trying to emphasize what I mean by pounding the table. We can also use nonverbals to contradict. I think of sarcasm when I think of this. We might say, oh, he's a really great student, and you might roll your eyes while you're saying that as a way of showing that you're being sarcastic. We use nonverbal messages as a substitute sometimes for words. We might wave goodbye without saying goodbye. So we use nonverbals a lot of times along with verbal. Those are just a few of the ways. There are some other significant functions of nonverbal communications that we use. We use them to make an impression on others. We use them to form or build relationships as well as define relationships. We use them to structure interaction, to structure conversation, influencing people, and communicating emotion. This picture here, what's going on? What's going on there? Let's say that gentleman on the right is a drill sergeant, and he's basically in the face of that soldier. What do you think he's trying to establish there? He really doesn't have to say a word, although it looks like he is, but just by his body language, he's sending a message. What do you think that is? So we do use them to form an impression for other people. We smile to be liked. We look someone in the eye in our culture to be believed. If we want to believe we're being truthful, we want to be sure to look them in the eye. Have you ever looked helpless? Put on like a little helpless expression when you feel like you failed and you feel bad about it, or maybe as a way to try to get help. We dress up to be respected. If we go to a job interview, we want to put our best self forward. And there's lots more ways that we try to make impressions on other people. We define relationships, holding hands with our boyfriend, girlfriend, or the boss at a company might have a big corner office all to himself while everyone else is in a cubicle. Part of that may be to show that he's the boss. Of course, he might also need that space, but it's also to project an image very often. We use nonverbals to structure conversation, turn-taking cues. Looking someone in the eye while you're talking with them, but turning away, or looking away when you're ready for the conversation to be over, or even just starting to turn the other way to walk away when it's time you think for the conversation to be over, when you want to end it. So we use those little turn-taking cues in our ongoing interactions with other people. Certainly expressing emotions. Now, at the beginning, we talked about the most obvious nonverbal channels or ways that we send messages. And those were facial expressions, body language. Those seem to be the first ones people think of. Eye contact. But here's the full list of what we'll be talking about. Space. How much space we take up. How much space we need. Territoriality. Artifactual communication. Touch. Paralanguage. Silence. Time. We'll talk quite a bit about that, because that's one that often people do not realize. And the last one, smell. These were in no particular order, but each of these is a very valid nonverbal channel that we receive messages through, and we may or may not perceive them correctly, but we're also sending through all of these. And culture, once again, that's why we studied culture near the very beginning of the semester, because culture drives a lot of what goes on with communication. What gestures are appropriate and facial expressions, what to do with the eyes, the colors we wear, touch communication, and how time is used. Those are a few that are notably impacted by the cultural teachings. Kinesics is what we call the study of nonverbal communication through face and body movements. Now, I'm not going to hold you responsible for all of these terms: emblems, illustrators, effect displays, regulators, adapters. Facial management techniques. Has anyone here ever pretended an emotion that they don't really feel, but they know what facial expression they need to show to try to get that emotion across? Sure. If you're really frightened and you want to appear brave, you might really hold back tears, or really try to be quiet, or keep yourself stiff. That's where stiff upper lip, that saying, comes from. Have you ever found out about a surprise before it happens, and you act surprised just to please everyone and let them know that you appreciate it, and you really are surprised when you really learned about it ahead of time? Eyes. We get a lot of information from the eyes. What do we expect people to do with their eyes when we're talking to them? We expect that they're going to meet us, our eye contact, don't we? So avoiding eye contact can send us messages, and whatever we make out of those messages is up to us. Sometimes we think the person might be lying. Sometimes we might think they just don't want to talk to us, that type of thing. Rolling eyes, moving eyes. We can get a lot of different meanings from eyes. Proxemics is the study of spatial communications, how much distance we leave between ourselves and someone else. Now, I don't know if it's necessary to really look at the distances we tend to give people, although we do know that we like our space in our culture. We know that about ourselves. We like our space, and if someone gets in our face, we really feel like we're being infringed on. Territoriality. We have certain expectations. When we when we claim a territory as ours, we expect that to be respected by others. There are different types of territories that we recognize, though. There's a type of territory that's distinctly ours. It's exclusively our territory. Can you think of one or two that might be your territory alone? Some people in class will say, my bedroom. Some people might say, my car. Some people might even say, my side of the bed and my nightstand. So there are some territories that we recognize are exclusively ours. On the other hand, there are also secondary territories. You realize that while you're in this classroom, this spot is your spot. You can sit down on the table in front of you, whatever you like, put your coat on the back of the chair, and you realize that when you're not here, someone else sits there. But while you're here, it's yours. That's a secondary territory. Then, of course, we also recognize public territory. For instance, the student lounge, your table when you go into Wendy's and sit down. Those are public territories. You may use them for a brief period of time, but they are entirely public. We use markers to show other people that we're here. Think about the first day of class. You come into a classroom, let's say you bring in a soda pop, you put it on the table along with your books, put your coat on the back of the chair, and then you leave maybe to go to the restroom. You expect that marker to claim your territory for that class. How would you feel if you came back into the room and your stuff had been moved? You'd feel infringed on, wouldn't you? So we use markers to show where we are. Can you think of a place where we use boundary markers? Can you think of different types of boundary markers? Markers that we set up to show where our space is. Well, one might be the fence of your backyard. Another might be that stick that you put down at Meijer or at the grocery store to separate your groceries from the next person. Those are markers. Oh, those are boundary markers specifically. We send messages and we receive messages through artifactual communication. And artifactual communication is basically anything man-made. So this would include tattoos, piercings, home decorations, the car you drive, anything man-made. Your clothing, anything man-made like that. Touch communication, and haptics is the study of tactile communication or touch communication. Paralanguage. Now, paralanguage is vocal, but it's nonverbal. Basically, this says that you can say the same words, but they can have a different meaning entirely by the differences in voice quality. The pitch of the message, the rate of speed, the volume, the emphasis put on certain words.
Let's look at this sentence. Is this the outfit you're wearing to the wedding? What might that mean to someone when you hear that? On the other hand, if I say, is this the outfit you're wearing to the wedding? Or, is this the outfit you're wearing to the wedding? So the same sentence, the same words can mean different things depending on the emphasis I put on the word. How about looking at loudness? If I were to say, I really don't want you to do that, versus, I really don't want you to do that, they mean different things, don't they? Aha, now we're talking about time messages. Well, chronemics is what we call the study of temporal communication. How we view time, how we use it, how we react to it, how we organize time, that's known as chronemics. And how we use time, how we react to it, all of that can be perceived by other people as meaning something. So we can send messages through time, the way we use time and view time. Let's look at monochronism versus polychronism. And we can actually, if we look at cultures, for instance, we might be able to consider a culture more monochronistic or more polychronistic. Let's look at what each of these means. So, monochronism basically means scheduling one thing at a time. There's a time for everything. Time is very compartmentalized. Now, in a monochronistic way of thinking, time drives the people. Oh, it's 5 o'clock. Got to make dinner. We eat at 5:30. Oh, got to go to work. I work from 9 to 5. I have a half an hour for lunch from 12:30 to 1. I have a dentist appointment at 10 a.m. Saturday. That kind of thing. That's monochronism. Now let's look at polychronism. Several things can be done at once. Okay, well, I'm going to go shopping today, and oh, I'm going to run into a couple of friends, so we're going to have lunch for a little while. Then we'll maybe continue our shopping, that kind of thing. So, in a more of a polychronistic way of thinking, we drive time to suit our needs. Yeah, I was going to do this tonight, but then I kind of ran over with what I was doing in the afternoon, so that's okay. I'll do this tomorrow. Monochronism versus polychronism.